What is it about us as a species that makes us different from other species when it comes to the instinct for survival? Personally, I believe that they are not. We all desire to remain relevant regardless of the ways we choose to do so. Yet, as the most intelligent of all species, we fail over and over again to unite for the cause of the planet, our only means of survival. We fail to understand that our very existence depends on us no longer being individualistic, a trait that humans nurture from the near moment of our birth. My needs, or should I say my wants, are different from yours. Yet, we all share a common space. Unfortunately, so few possess so much. And like nature, the vulnerable continue to be stepped on. But humans also possess the faculty of conscience, of knowing what is right from wrong, good from bad, yet remain divided in the ways we choose to survive, not always appearing to be in our own best interests. So is there hope? Can there be hope? What will it take for common sense to prevail? The key word here being common. It is clear that a lack of positive action in defense of our survival can only lead to our doom, and that our survival is directly linked to our future. Living for the now will continue to be counterproductive. We are all familiar with the old adage of the frog that when placed in a pot of water that is allowed to heat up, it will not be agitated until it is too late. Considering all of the present indicators that point to increased temperatures across the globe and its consequences, are we any different?
My voice was a lone voice in the wilderness. So I was talking, but very few people were listening. But it was when Paul came in, then instead of just me talking and people thinking that I was a crazy guy and so on, there was another crazy guy.
He cares for St. Lucia and its environment and the wildlife, and really he was an inspiration.
We cannot, at this point in time, continue to cut any more forests. Because if we do, I don't think that we'll have anything left for our children. And my concern is that we should do something now. And if we should miss this opportunity, then I don't know what's going to happen to St. Lucia. I will not give up. This is the only way.
I remember some years ago, maybe 2-3 years ago, right in the Micoud area up the line. That's where I come from. A parrot was sitting on a golden apple tree just right next to the house, of the owner, and feeding on the golden apples. And just imagine, 30, 40 years ago, you would never have seen, a parrot so close in the community in itself. Because they just did not exist, in large numbers to be flying and foraging and ranging, out so far from the interior of the forest. In the late 60s, 70s, it was, discovered that the parrot population was so small that it was concentrated, in the interior of the forest. But the parrot really took, center stage because, it's a very charismatic bird, and for several years, for for a long time. People love birds and they've loved the parrots. They've collected it, but you did have hunting that was taking place on the wildlife species, and the parrot was not free from that sort of pressure. So those low numbers that were being, seen or observed in the late 60s, early 70s, some of it was a direct result of hunting, deforestation, because they were losing their habitat as well too. So at that time, a number of things happened. A number of actions were taken, to help the plight of the parrot and St. Lucian, wildlife in general. I mean, mind you, there were some persons, some scientists, some researchers who believed that the parrot population, it was doomed. It would have gone extinct. And as I tell you, an estimate of about 100 individuals in the wild, yeah, I think that it didn't sound like that there was much hope, in that population at the time. But a massive effort was made and a number of actions were taken. One of the first things that was done was, a massive education campaign, which was developed. And that awareness and education campaign, was sustained for, decades, where the forestry division, they went into the schools, they went into communities, they did lots of PSAs, TV programs. There was also this Bush Talk series, that was developed, and they worked with, it was Mariah Gregg, at the time that they worked with on this Bush Talk. So lots of these publications were being made and distributed to the schools, to the public. And that campaign was the Pride campaign, because it took pride in, it was meant to create, a sense of ownership and belonging, of the parrot, the St. Lucia parrot. So the awareness campaign was very successful. Then you had legislation. During that time, the Wild Bird Act of 1885, that was still on the books. So that Wild Bird Act was repealed, and you had new legislation in the Wildlife Protection Act, that came about. And the act gave protection to most wildlife species, in St. Lucia.
Every time I come here, I fall in love with this place. Every time, because I come back home. It's like going back home to a loved one, going back home to a grandmother. Going back home to somebody that you really, really love. And for me, my life, my conservation life, really started here. And I remember when starting here and meeting Anita James and Paul Butler and the friends here, Christina and Cassian and Margaret, and going to the schools and seeing the children respond to us coming there, with the mascot, and the parrots, and then teaching the song with Frank Norville, and seeing that thing, and the feeling, I remember the feelings that we had. And for me, those were some of my proudest moments working in the field of conservation. And we did that, and that exploded. We went to every school down St. Lucia. Every child was happy to see us. Everybody was singing the Amazona versicolor song. And those were the days, those were days when forestry embraced what was not even something that they understood what was happening, which was social marketing. Social marketing was not a buzzword at that time, but we were already doing that here. We were, we recognized that we had to be able to change, and that change had to be sustained. And so forestry brought in all of the things, all of the tools to help sustain that. And it was good. It was wonderful to be able to go to the schools and have this love affair with it. And you were like a celebrity, you go there and everybody loved what you do. And then we partnered with fisheries and others. And we went as a team, and that was a coalition approach. And I think that was one of the things that I loved the most. I remember Andre Santoma and others, and we went to the schools and we did our thing. And people loved it, and we worked as one. And I think maybe that was that is one of the things that really ensured the success of that kind of campaign. I mean, the IUCN, which is the biggest scientific organization looking at the environment, listed that as one of the most successful campaigns in the world. And we started it right here in St. Lucia. So we had every reason to be proud. I think almost everybody in St. Lucia, you go and you ask them, what is the scientific name of the national bird, and they will tell you. You try doing that in the United States or anywhere else for that matter about what is the scientific name of your national bird, and most people would not know. So we focused on that, and forestry continued doing stuff. You know, I mean, the parrot campaign was one thing, but Anita James and others were working on for the Learning for Environmental Action project, where they're developing curriculum and all of those sorts of things to really hone in. So the parrot was the flagship for everything. But the department really focused on trying to use the parrot to bring in everything else. It was part of a strategy, and that strategy included everything, because we realized that, okay, this person, you're exposed to the parrot, but you go home, what is your mommy saying about it? When you go to church, what is the priest saying about it? So it was really a part of a strategy. So even before forestry and rare understood it, they were using the 360 approach, which is, you know, the surround thing approach, that everywhere you went, you had information coming at you. But then we stopped that. And I think we here need to really revisit that. Because if we had something that is so powerful, and to this day continues in places all over the world, in the Philippines, all over the world. So, and people keep talking about behavior change, which is an important thing. Because back in the day, we were all about awareness, about changing people's knowledge, and that was one thing. But we have seen, and many things have taught us, that raising awareness is not enough. We saw that for HIV. We're seeing that for the environment. Because people may know something, but are they actually doing something about it? Not necessarily so. So we really need to be able to look at the science behind changing people's attitudes and behavior for us to be able to succeed. And I see the young people, I go out with persons from, you know, the CYEN and others, and they have the passion. The young people want to go up, and they want to go out, and they want to do stuff. They want to get in the river, they want to go to the forest, they want to get involved in counting parrots and all of those sorts of things. And then they grow up, and then they grow out, and then they leave this vacuum. But who's going to occupy that space? How do we keep that going? And I think that our species, when I say our species, I don't mean the human species, but the species that we are supposed to be helping safeguard, ensure that they're there, conserve, preserve, most of them, that they depend on us. And I think we're letting them down. I think we have a lot of introspection to do. I think we, in the conservation field especially, need to be able to find that passion inside of us. A friend of mine from Dominican Republic always used to say to me, Regis, you know, if you're running a campaign for the white-breasted thrasher, the white-breasted thrasher should know that. And I asked him, but how? He said, well, if you're doing a campaign for the white-breasted thrasher, its environment would improve, right? The threats would be diminished and so on. There are a lot of people that are doing some fantastic work, but they're not in the majority. And those persons really ought to be celebrated.
This generation must realize that we are trustees of a rather fragile environment, and we must protect it and pass it on to generations. We cannot pass on deserts and polluted rivers and streams, etc., deforestation to a future generation. It is our duty now to do something positive, to pull ourselves back from the brink. We really, really in danger, and we have realized that in St. Lucia.
We're on a country of 238 square miles, you know, 27 miles long, 14 miles wide, and we can drive around it in no time. And so the species that we have, we're all on this little rock. But how many of us really, truly, really passionate about, or really care? Even those of us that are charged with the responsibility for looking after those things and those species. Do we really care? And we have to ask ourselves that. Do we really wake up at night worried about this storm that is coming? Whenever a storm is coming, are we concerned about what would happen if some of our species get washed away? Or are we only concerned about the roof on our house and whether we have insurance to cover that? Do we really care? We hear, about the Fedilance this and the Boer that, and we hear all of those sorts of things. And do St. Lucians, do we, the people that are supposed to be caring for them, even care? Do we even know those things? Do we even take the time? For me, I will spend the rest of my life caring and doing everything to ensure that my children and my grandchildren can see those birds, can be there and see them, not on TV or in a magazine, but to actually be able to walk and see those birds fly over. We need to be able to do something. I will spend all of my life, because something happened to me here at Forestry. Something happened that had me fall in love with St. Lucia. And every single thing, and I mean from humans to the smallest animal species, something happened to me. And I hope that we can figure out a way to make that same transformation happen to the people that we touch.
My name is Andrew Santoma, and I've been a student of photography for over 4 decades. As an underwater videographer, if there's one area of photography that has intrigued me the most, it'd have to be macro photography, because it allows me to explore the smallest of organisms that directly and indirectly influence my very existence. Another passion of mine is environmental science. With these 2 disciplines, I'm able to arm myself with the tools necessary to take people on a journey that compels them to think differently about their surroundings. We find ourselves confronted almost on a daily basis with a host of buzzwords that define the state of our surroundings. Words like ecosystem, biodiversity, deforestation, pollution, carrying capacity, habitat, global warming, climate change, and it goes on. But how many of us have been given the opportunity to truly understand what these words actually mean, or how they impact our lives? To illustrate this point, the word ecosystem can be defined simply as the interaction between living organisms and the space they dwell in. Yet, given the opportunity to experience this firsthand, can be life-changing. Come with me on a small journey. Ecosystems can exist within ecosystems, all aiding in the upkeep of the whole. They can be created over a short period of time, such as a hurricane season, when confronted with extreme weather systems that bring about alterations to the environment, especially when left unchecked over time, or it can take millenniums. Regardless, when we interfere with the environment, such as trampling or introducing waste, all this can be foreign or invasive to the environment. In the case of waste, these discarded items, if left, can eventually become part of the ecosystem, making up the dynamics of an ever-evolving, ever-growing, adapting, complex living structure. Unfortunately, poorly scheduled environmental cleanups, though well-intended, can add to the existing stresses confronting ecosystems on a daily basis. By removing waste items that have now become a part of an ecosystem, we destabilize the very environment we are attempting to protect. Take, for example, a colony of ants which once traveled a pathway unobstructed by waste, now finds itself traveling a greater distance, expelling more energy, and sometimes no longer aiding in the advancement of a particular area because its usual course of direction has been altered. These examples of us interacting with the environment is not intended to point fingers, but to allow us to more closely examine the effects of our actions. As an advancing nation such as ours, We have found ourselves adopting lifestyles that completely ignore the associated support mechanisms that aid in the upkeep of our surroundings. Our waste containers are too small, too few, and do not cater to recycling on a practical scale. We lack a systematic approach to dealing with the problems created by these new lifestyles as well as traditional ones. So, what are the solutions? Education. Yes, this can be a means to influencing a better response on our part, leading to a personal desire to become part of the solution rather than the problem. Another option can be a national drive to more consistently address the problems brought about by our daily interactions with the environment, both publicly and privately.
So I want you to think about your everyday life. What are some things that you have done or you are doing that might affect the environment, even if it's a small impact? What can you do to change that? Okay, now think about your household. How much waste does your household produce? What can you do or your family do to reduce that? So one major issue is not enough people know. People know about it, but they don't know the extent. So you have to take it on yourself to educate people on the serious effects and the minor things that they think does not have an impact, how large of an impact it actually has. So talk to your friends, your families, anybody you really meet. Talk to them about it and make a difference.
I've been very careful not to refer to the environment as belonging to us. So, what is the point of all of this? It is for us to take charge of our actions, not only for the betterment of our personal space, but also for the whole. After all, this is the only planet we'll ever know.
The children are our future. All of what we are enjoying now is because our parents left it for us. And we must introduce the children to love and care for the environment at a very early age. See the plants, see the various foods you can get from the plants, enjoy the fresh air, learn the importance of trees, hear the birds, listen to the forest, and at this age they will appreciate, they can begin to gain an appreciation for what is around them. Because most kids take those things for granted. Some parents never introduce them to birds, to trees, to plants. But if you can bring them out at a very early age and explain to them the importance of all what's around them, then I think we are setting the ground for a brighter future. Not only for ourselves, but for themselves and for their children and their children's children. The generations yet to come.